What's up, everybody? Appreciate you tuning on in. If you are watching this live, congratulations. You're a sicko. Just like me here, we are starting this recording at 12:27 a.m. Eastern. And maybe you're watching UFC. I was watching my boy, Bo Nickel before. Not a great fight, but hey, win's a win, moving on. But hey, if you're watching us late night, appreciate you. We got a lot going on here. So much to break down. If you're watching or listening to us on Sunday morning, hey, no worries. Thanks for making us a part of your weekend here. We got a lot to talk about here from what was, you could say, for the most part, a boring week 12, a chalky week 12. But I still think there's a lot to break down and talk about here because there were a lot of impactful games and moments that I think are worth talking about. First things first, let's lead off here with the big game, right? The marquee highlight game of the weekend, Georgia, Tennessee. Georgia trying to play their way in. And for me, they did. I mean, clearly, look, they're playing the number 17 in the country. If they won this game, which they did, they're now back in the playoff. And as long as they don't lose to UMass next week or Georgia Tech in 2 weeks, they're in the playoff, no question about it. But I want to give props to Carson Beck. He's been very criticized, rightfully so now, for weeks and months by many, including yours truly here. I thought when you consider circumstance and opponent, I thought by far he played his best game of his career on Saturday night when Georgia needed him the most. I mean, you look at him, he threw, I should say, for 347 yards, had 2 touchdowns. But the most important stat I thought that he had in this game, 0. 0 as in turnovers. No interceptions, no fumbles. He kept the football safe, which is huge because that's his biggest bugaboo. You know, he's had a lot of problems keeping the ball in his hands, and he's put Georgia's defense in some really bad spots with some untimely picks. I mean, this was his first game since Auburn almost 6 weeks ago. First game without a turnover. It's a long time. And they played some big games. And to Georgia's credit, they've won a few big games, including Texas, when Carson, turned the ball over a ton. But I thought him keeping the ball clean against what I would say the best defense he's faced all season long. No disrespect to Tennessee. No disrespect to Ole Miss. Or did I say Tennessee? I meant Texas. My apologies. No disrespect to Texas or Ole Miss. I thought Tennessee's defense, with what Georgia faced earlier this evening, was the best defense on their schedule. And Beck did a really good job. Really impressive. I did not think he'd be able to do it. I was shocked that Georgia's offense of all teams was the first to score 20 points on Tennessee this season. But Beck was tremendous. And by the way, he was tremendous after a slow start, which Georgia punted the first 3 possessions, and you're thinking, oh my God, here we go again. Here we go again with this offense. They're going to score 3 points at home. Tennessee's going to win. It's 10-0. All the juice and the energy from the building was sucked right out with a strong start by Tennessee and a slow start by the Dogs. You're thinking, I'm sure if you're a Georgia fan or a Georgia bettor or Georgia believer, here we go again. I was thinking it. That's for damn sure. And I was a neutral observer. And so to Beck's credit, not only did he play well, but he played well after a really slow start. When doubts could have crept in, I thought he showed tremendous mental toughness in this game by bouncing back, not allowing the outside noise to influence him, not allowing the doubts to influence him as well, and instead played, again, I think I would say the best game of his career when Georgia needed him to the most. Now, I think Georgia's now back in the playoff. They're definitely in the playoff after this win. Would I put them back in the national title contender category? Remember last week I took them out? No. They, to me, are still out when it comes to winning a national title because what we saw with Beck tonight was tremendous, right? But it's more the anomaly. Like him playing like this, sound, crisp, clean, turnover-free football is not who he is. Again, this is his first time in 5 games he didn't have a turnover. In the span of 6 games, he threw 12 picks. In these big games, he's played poorly. And by the way, the other areas of Georgia's offense tonight, even though Beck was tremendous, were still bad. That run game, atrocious. And by the way, we found out that Trevor Etienne, excuse me, my apologies, with fractured ribs, I mean, he's not coming back next week. I mean, that could be an injury that could be, he could be out for the year, or at least if he does come back, not as effective as he was early in the season. So that run game for Georgia, which is one of the worst in the country, is not getting better anytime soon and was stuffed for the most part against Tennessee. The receivers still can't catch the ball. I don't understand what's going on. Beck should have thrown for 400 yards in this game. if his receivers could just hold on to the balls that hit them in the hands, not make circus catches, not make OBJ over the head with one hand catches, just make catches that hit your hands. Beck has 400 yards, and this Georgia offense is much different than we're talking about, but they can't do it. Lead the league in drops, did it yet again on Saturday. So while Beck played well, the other areas, the problem areas for Georgia showed up again. And by the way, they got more banged up. Bell left this game in a boot. The jack of all trades guy that was supposed to help take some pressure off the run game with his ability to run some fly sweeps, maybe line up in the backfield like we saw. Well, now who knows when he's going to play, if he's going to play again. Not great. So Georgia got more banged up. Other areas were problematic. I still can't see this team running the table in a in a 4-game situation because they're not going to get a bye and winning a national title when especially their first game is going to be on the road. They're not getting a home game. And so we've seen Georgia struggle on the road. Kirby Smart's talked about the difficulty of playing and winning on the road. Well, you're not going to be playing on the road in the SEC most likely, but you'll be in State College or Columbus or South Bend. You know what? It's going to be damn hard to win there. It's going to be cold. It's going to be loud. It is going to be a raucous environment. We've seen Georgia struggle in those road environments. I don't think anything's changing. So while it's a great win and they're back in the playoff race, and I think now, again, assuming they don't suffer a catastrophic upset against UMass or Georgia Tech, Georgia's in the playoff. But when it comes to national title contention, am I now believing in the Dogs? I am not. On the flip side here, because I did see people talk about this game as an elimination game, not just for Georgia, but for Tennessee as well. I don't get that. You look at Tennessee now, they lose this game. Now they're 8-2. And you look at where they fall, because the committee has in previous years, I think this year as well, they've what they do is they will group teams based on how many losses you have. So they'll kind of sort teams that are undefeated first, then sort teams that have 1 loss, then sort teams that have 2 losses. So if we go by that theory, which the committee has done before, then you look at the 2-loss teams right now that that Tennessee is in contention with. They are now in the same category as Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia. All 4 of those teams right now sit at 8-2 on the season. And so when you look at it, right, where does Tennessee fall in that mix? I think the rankings of those 4 SEC teams now that sit at 8-2 are as follows. I would have Bama as the highest ranked team in that grouping, followed by Georgia, Tennessee 3rd. I put Ole Miss 4 because you look at the resumes here, right? Bama has the win over Georgia, which now looks a lot better after Georgia's win today over Tennessee. Their losses, both on the road. Vandy, not great. It looks better because Vandy now is a better team than we thought when they initially beat Alabama. Still, not a great loss. And then obviously at Tennessee, who's been a top 10 team up until today, or really up until the rankings come out on Tuesday. I expect Tennessee to drop out of the top 10 after this. But other than that, up to this point, I should say, Tennessee's been a top 10 team. You look at Georgia, right? We obviously know their 2 losses were on the road, but now they have wins over Tennessee and Texas, 2 top 10 victories. 1 on the road, 1 at home. That's a really impressive resume for the Dogs. Both their losses are good losses, quote unquote, right to Alabama by a touchdown, or less than that. And on the road last week at Ole Miss. You look at Tennessee, why to me they're above Ole Miss is you have that win over Bama, which I would say is better than Ole Miss's win over Georgia. And you look at the losses, Tennessee has better losses. Tennessee lost to Arkansas, not great. Not great at all. But your other loss was to Georgia on the road. Where you look at Ole Miss, yeah, you beat Georgia, but your losses were to Kentucky at home, awful loss, and to LSU on the road, which now looks worse by the day. So at least in Tennessee's case, they have 1 good loss in a competitive game against Georgia on the road. Ole Miss has 2 bad losses that are now getting worse by the second. And sure, that win over Georgia was great. But right now, when you look at how this playoff landscape shakes out, I would say it's Bama, Georgia, Tennessee. And right now, I would say Ole Miss is that 4th SEC team. And Georgia was that 4th SEC team last week. And guess where Georgia was? On the outside looking in. So I would say right now, Ole Miss, for me, if I was on the committee, they'd be on the outside looking in. Right now, with what we've seen so far and where you would rank kind of these 4 SEC teams that are holding kind of the back end of the rankings, I think right now the Ole Miss is the biggest loser. I don't see how or why you would punish Tennessee for losing to Georgia in a competitive fashion compared to when you look at Ole Miss's resume versus the Vols. I think the Vols have the edge. I would put Tennessee above Ole Miss. I would keep Tennessee right now in the college football playoff race and in the top 12 moving into week 13. We just mentioned LSU before. Wow. They lost again. Coming off that blowout loss at home to Alabama. They no-showed at Florida. You lose to a team that was just got their heads beaten by Texas last week. If you look at LSU, here's the reality. LSU is in the worst head coaching spot of any team in college football right now. They're in the worst spot because with Brian Kelly, right? I think he's proven to you now in year number 3, he's not winning a national title. The last 3 coaches you've hired have won national titles. That stops with Kelly. He's not winning you a national title. So you would think logically, oh, well, Ryan, let's fire him. Get him out of there. Get someone who can win a national title back in Baton Rouge. Here's the problem. You owe him $60 million. You ain't firing him, at least not this year. So he's going to be back in 2025. Brian Kelly's going nowhere, and I think Bryce Underwood does help with that. We'll get to that in a second. But Brian Kelly right now is not going anywhere. So if you're LSU, you're sitting here at 6-4. 6-4. Well, you're supposed to be contending for national titles every year. Now you're losing 3 in a row. You're losing to Florida on the road. Oh, my God. Yuck. Credit to Billy Napier and Florida, by the way. But what are you doing if you're LSU? But the problem is for the Tigers, you can't get out of that deal. You can't. You're not paying him $60 million to go away. Not especially when you paid Ed Orgeron, was it $17 million to get the hell out of town? Less than 2 years after winning a national title. And by the way, I know fans don't want to think about this, but this is also now reality going forward with coaching changes. Shared revenue is coming to college football next year. So you're looking at players getting now a good chunk of the pie that normally they would not touch, right? Like all the money right now players are getting from NIL, from donations like you and I, right? Fans are giving money to give to players or obviously sponsorships. Well, now with the revenue share, players are getting money directly from schools that are coming from TV networks that otherwise they would just pocket themselves and use for other things. So now all of a sudden eating a $60 million buyout is a lot less palatable because you have just less money because more of that money coming in is now going to the student athletes. So if you're LSU, you're screwed here. You are screwed. You have a coach that cannot win you a national title and really right now not get you close to a national title, but you can't fire him. You are where Texas A&M was last year, minus the oil money. You're screwed. That's the worst place to be right now in all of college football. You have the worst head coaching situation in all of the country. LSU fans, I feel bad for you. I mean, at least you still got, at least 2019 was not that long ago, so you could still kind of live in those glory days. But you want to talk about building new memories and new glory days? Not happening with Brian Kelly anytime soon. My apologies to you. Oh, one thing about Bryce Underwood, by the way. I do think that him at least staying committed to LSU right now is helping keep Brian Kelly around for 2025. But here's a concern. Here's something to watch. Brian Kelly's supposed to be a quarterback guru, right? That's his expertise is quarterbacks and quarterback development. Obviously, he just had a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback last year in Jaden Daniels. But you look at Garrett Nussmeier and his development or lack thereof, it's concerning now when you think of a real talent coming to town next year in Underwood. Because Garrett Nussmeier, we saw it on Saturday and we saw it all season long. He's making the same mistakes he made week 1 against USC. Those same mistakes happen now in the swamp on Saturday. He's a bad decision maker. He puts the ball in harm's way too often. And it doesn't matter if Brian Kelly's telling him on the sideline, something's not computing. He's not listening. He's not learning. He's not getting better. And so that is concerning because now you start to wonder, is Brian Kelly lost his touch? Is Brian Kelly now the right guy to develop a quarterback to make him better? Can you get Bryce Underwood, who's an insane talent, but can you make him better? Can you make him better from year 1 to year 2, from game 1 to game 12 even? And right now, I think the question's, the jury's out on that. Because you're seeing right now with Nussmeier, he has really, really struggled so far this season and nothing is improving. That's a common theme right now in all these LSU losses, him getting sacked, holding on to the ball too long, and putting the ball in harm's way. Common theme in all of LSU's losses this year. And so nothing's changing. That's concerning. That's something to keep an eye on here, as well as Brian Kelly's tenure in Baton Rouge does continue. But yeah, it's tough. By the way, shout out to Florida's social media team. This was tremendous. I retweeted on my Twitter, Ryan_Hickey and number 3. Check it out there if you haven't seen it yet. Florida's football social media tweeted a gif of Brian Kelly slamming the table like he did after week 1 in the loss to USC, where the water bottle jumps and they go, "Coach, please don't break our tables." A+ trolling from Florida. A+. I give them credit because I'm sure midway through the year when they're getting their brains bit in week after week, they're thinking to themselves, well, we're not going to, have a chance against LSU, so all this good creativity is going to be for naught. Credit to them for still thinking, still having that ready, and when you had the opportunity, you fired, and boy, did you hit. That was really, really funny. By all measures, I did not see Brian Kelly slam a table, did not see Brian Kelly launch a water bottle in the air, so objects in Gainesville are safe, at least for tonight. Can't say the same about when he gets back to Baton Rouge. Speaking of coaching concern here, this is after a win, but look at what Dabo Swinney did yet again here, and he just continues to raise red flags about the direction of the program. They beat Pitt. Actually, I take that back. The more accurate way to describe it is they survived against Pitt. 24-20, needed Cade Klubnik to go hero mode here on a 50-yard quarterback draw to score late in the game in order to save them from an embarrassing defeat to Pitt. The concerning part about Clemson is that they continue to regress, and now they're regressing to the point where they are getting pushed by average teams. Average teams. Like, look at what Pitt had today. Pitt was on the backup quarterback. Eli Holstein too hurt to play, so instead they went to Nate Yarnell, who's not very good. Not very good at all. And by the way, they asked Nate Yarnell to throw the ball 59 times in this game. So backup quarterback was in for Pitt. Clemson won the turnover battle in this game, and Pitt committed 13 penalties in this game, including a sequence I've never seen before, where it is 3rd and goal on the 1-yard line, and Pitt proceeded to have 3 straight procedural penalties, illegal formation, and 2 false starts in a row, to where now you go from 3rd and goal at the 1, and with a chance, by the way, to tie the game. It was 17-10 at this point. You go from that to now all of a sudden you're 3rd and goal at the 16. You got a gift from the gods because Pitt fumbled the bag in terms of play calling down by the goal line. Then when they're knocking on the door, they shoot themselves in the foot 3 straight times. That right there should be, okay, we got out of this, and let's just now put the foot on the throat. And before that Klubnik touchdown run with less than a minute to go, Clemson was shut out in the second half. They did nothing. Up 17-7 and almost gagged it away, despite all we just laid out, going against Pitt in this game and going in Clemson's direction. And now you have to look, although it's a win, but look at where Clemson is. Right? They went from a point where they were beating elite teams. They were competing and winning national championships. They have now fallen to a point where they can't beat elite teams anymore. And now they're getting pushed on a relatively consistent basis in a weak ACC by average teams in that conference that I think we could all objectively say is the worst Power 4 conference right now in college football. Yet even those average teams right now are pushing Clemson on a regular basis. But hey, according to Dabo Swinney, you know what the problem isn't? Roster construction. Oh, no. In Dabo's mind, roster construction's not the problem. You know what it is? Fan expectations. He wants to blame the fans. He wants to get upset because fans expect the sun, the moon, and the stars, and all he can deliver is, I don't know what the equivalent would be, a trip on the ground, I guess. You're not even taking off. No liftoff. Like this game right here is a glaring example of where Clemson is, the state of the program. They're an average team. That's all they are. They are nowhere close to the top. They're nowhere close to getting back to the top, in part because the head man, yet again, struggles to see the real problem. And anytime you come after Dabo, he did this after the Louisville game as well. He's on the defensive. Oh, it's little old Clemson. Oh, everybody wants to fire me. We lose a game and the world is over. He created expectations with his once great coaching. And now he doesn't want to face those expectations anymore because he wants to live in a world that's not realistic. He wants to live in a world where everybody's happy to be there. That's the world he's living in. He expects fans just to be grateful that Clemson takes the football field every single Saturday. That's all he thinks fans want of him. It's ridiculous. It's the most delusional thing I've ever seen. Because now he gets upset, whether it's Tyler and Spartanburg, right? That viral caller last year on the coaches show, calling him out for his complacency and his regression, whether it's just fans this year getting upset on social media, him trying to deflect by saying, it's not roster construction and I'm doing everything the right way and the fan expectations are to blame. Like, you're putting it's your fault here. You're unrealistic. The guy's delusional. And this is what happens now when the bar is set so low, is that you are now vulnerable to almost any team in the crappiest conference in the Power Four. Clemson is what they are. Great English. And you saw that again today. They got lucky they didn't get got. But boy, the fact that was even a close game, the fact they had to sweat that out shows you how far Clemson has fallen. They're not getting back anytime soon. Because as long as Dabo's in charge, we said this before and I'll say it again, they will never be national championship contenders. Again, excuse me. That's very rude of me. They'll never be national title contenders again as long as Dabo's in charge. That is a guarantee. And if you disagree, you're seeing it right now play out right in front of you. Right in front of your eyes. All right. Let's talk. We talked a lot of team here. Let's talk individual. I saw this a lot today. Colorado, great win. We'll get to them second here because the biggest storyline coming out of the Colorado win over Utah was the Heisman stock of Travis Hunter, right? Had a big game where he had a rushing touchdown, had an interception. Everyone's going goo goo gaga. His Heisman odds go through the roof. Now he's by far now the betting favorite. I don't understand it. And this is not a knock on Travis Hunter, but instead a praise for two other guys. Like if I was a Heisman voter, if I had my ballot right now, and again, we still got 3 weeks to go, right? 2 weeks of regular season plus conference championship weekend. That counts as well in the Heisman race. 3 weeks to go here. My ballot would be with 3 weeks to go and open to change. Cam Ward 1, Ashton Jeanty 2, Travis Hunter 3. And the biggest, for me, differentiating factor is this thought. If you took each of those three guys off their team, how different would those seasons be? If we took Cam Ward off Miami, is Miami still in the college football playoff race? And the answer is hell no. Hell no. Miami is nowhere close because you look at what Cam Ward's impact is. Cam Ward is Miami. Like, he is Miami. He's that team. The only reason why Miami right now is in the top 10 and still in a really good spot here to win the ACC and get a first-round bye is because of Cam Ward and his play. The offense right now is everything for Miami, and the entire offense revolves around number one. This is a guy who leads all of college football in passing yards, in passing touchdowns. He's accounted for the most points of anybody in college football so far this year. He is a one-man machine. And if you took Cam Ward off of Miami, that team, instead of being 9-1, they are 4-5, maybe 5-4. Like, think about it. Think about how reliant they've been. They got no defense to rely on. The run game still is effective in part because Cam Ward's threat of running and passing is there. If you took Cam Ward off Miami, I think easily, conservatively, is a 4-win team or 4 fewer win team. If you took Ashton Jeanty off of Boise State, we are not talking about the Broncos right now being in college football playoff contention. Not at all. I mean, look at this game that he played tonight against San Jose State, where that's a close game for 3 quarters. And then what happened in the fourth quarter? Jeanty got going. He got rolling, and it led Boise State to breaking away and running away with it late. This guy who in this game, 159 yards, 3 touchdowns. Again, not only is he the league leader in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns, by the way, he has 400 more rushing yards than the second closest guy. He's not just breaking records and putting up big yards. He is separating himself from everybody else in the country by a massive margin. But the same thing with Ward. Genty is that offense. Genty is that team. So again, if you take him off, Boise State is 3 or 4 wins worse than what they are right now. Where if you look at what Travis Hunter has done so far this year, and this is not to diminish what he's done. It's incredible what he's doing. He's a great athlete. He's a great player. But let's be real here. If you take Travis Hunter off of Colorado, are the Buffs that much different this year? I would say no. Maybe they have one fewer win, but I think for the most part, they are right in a similar mix to where they are right now. I don't think anything drastically changes, in part because Colorado has Shedeur Sanders, who looks to be right now the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft. He's playing like one of the best quarterbacks in all college football so far this year. He's tremendous. You have talented receivers to throw to that are not named Hunter, and that defense, especially that defensive line, is so improved, so much tougher than they were last year. That defense overall has turned around drastically. Where you look at Travis, right? He's played at a high level last year and this year, right? Like I don't think he drastically got better from one year to the next. And that's not like he just played at such a high level last year that it's hard to improve from what he with what he did, right? So he still is playing at a high level. But even though last year he was playing great, that team won 4 games last year. With a guy playing great on both sides of the ball, Colorado's a 4-win team. Now they're an 8-win team, could get to 10 wins, could get to the Big 12 title game this year, with Hunter playing around the same it did last year with still a high level. So that just shows you right there that if you took Travis Hunter off Colorado, their season is not much different. He's a great player. He's a great player. When you talk about the Heisman, right? We talk about like value. You take Cam Ward off Miami, that team is 4 or 5 wins worse. You take Ashton Genty off Boise State, they are nowhere close to the college football playoff discussion. That's why for me, Ward is still 1, Genty's 2, and Hunter is 3. Because of the impact that each player has on their team, it to me is more impressive, and you get weighted more when there's so much riding on you to succeed and come through, where again, there's not a lot of pressure for Travis Hunter to come through, to be honest. He was a lockdown corner last year. Didn't matter, they lost 8 games. He's a lockdown corner this year. Defense played a lot better. Not really because of him, because that defensive line got better. Offensively, again, that was a 4-win team last year. He was tremendous on both sides of the ball. This year, he's still a threat, closing in on 1,000 yards, but you have a great quarterback and also talented receivers around him. Colorado would not be that much different with or without Travis Hunter, which is why, for me, I wouldn't put him as a Heisman favorite. I don't think he's deserving of it. I think he's 3rd. He's been a fun story. He's a great athlete, and what he's doing is tremendous. But we can't give the Heisman Trophy, which is supposed to be meant for the best player in college football, to a guy that is doing something that we haven't seen before, but it's not changing how his team's trajectory is going. We never seen somebody play offense and defense as much as Travis is. But with that said, again, how much impact is he actually having on these games? It's to me, nowhere close to the impact Cam Ward has on games and Ashton Genty has on games. That's why for me, Travis Hunter, 3rd in my Heisman ballot here with still 3 weeks to go. Let's wrap up here. Appreciate you watching still if you are. Again, it's almost 1 a.m. here on the East Coast. So you are a true sicko, and I love you for that. I'm a sicko here staying up. We got Boise State in the background here. Let's see what we got. Playing in close. I think Boise State, again, I'm still a Boise State guy. Oh, not Boise State. See, I'm losing my mind. It's so late. BYU. My apologies. BYU in the background here as they try to close out Kansas, keep their Big 12 playoff hopes alive. Let's do some quick hitters here to get out of here and wrap up this Saturday in week number 12. All right. Number 1 team in the country survives, right? Oregon does hang out to beat Wisconsin here late. I'm not panicking too much about it because this was Oregon's worst game they've played since week 2 against Boise State. And really, even in that game, we had no idea how good the Broncos were until, a few weeks later. So that win looked actually worse in real time than it does now. Looks a lot better. But still, this is your worst performance and most inconsistent performance here since week number 2. I'm not panicking. I'm not panicking at all. Oregon's been a team up to this point that has gotten better each and every week. It's college football. It's 18 and 22-year-old kids. You are allowed, I think, 1 or 2 slip-ups. They won. That's all that matters. Now, I will say, this was a decision I've never seen before, and I hope I never see again. In case you missed it, Dan Lanning, when the Ducks are up by 3, under 2 minutes to go, they had a chance to kick a field goal. It was about 4th and 5, I think, off the top of my head here. In field goal territory, they could have made it a 6-point game and forced Wisconsin to drive the length of the field to score a touchdown in order to win. So it's 4th and 5, just under 2 minutes to go. Dan Lanning opts for a fake field goal. Doesn't convert. It comes up about a yard short. Now, Braden Locke, Wisconsin's quarterback, sucks. So he threw a pick like 2 plays later, game over. So it was no harm, no foul in the sense of the fake field goal costing Oregon the game. Few things. Number 1, stupid. There's no justifying it. No justifying it at all. But it makes sense when you see the report this week come out from ESPN that NFL execs view Dan Lanning as the next Dan Campbell. Makes a lot of sense now. Aggressive, culture guy. Players love the personality. But you see, he's an aggressive by nature guy, and that's good. But there's sometimes decisions that border on recklessness and then just veer into flat-out stupidity. And that is where we've seen Dan Campbell do it before, and we saw Dan Lanning do it on Saturday night. Fake field goal in the 4th quarter of a 3-point game is flat-out stupid. I get your idea of, hey, let's go the nail in the coffin. We get a first down, the game's over, right? Wisconsin has like 1 timeout, the game's over, we win. If you're in that mindset, though, just go for it. You have one of the best offenses in the country. Dylan Gabriel is a guy you trust. Jordan James, your running back, is running the ball well. Why on earth would you rather put the ball in the hands of a punter on a fake punt? Because that's what they did. They snapped the ball, the holder picked up and ran on the left side of the line. Why would you want the ball with the game on the line in the hands of a punter instead of your offense, instead of your Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback, instead of your running back that has gotten better each and every week, and by the way, was running better in the 4th quarter? It's just like the logic is just so stupid. And look, again, if you're Dan Lanning here, I would say no harm, no foul with this decision, in part because, again, you didn't end up losing the game. But if you learn from this, if you say, you know what, that was pretty stupid. We got lucky, but that's a learning lesson. I'm not going to do that going forward. Okay, then you know what? No harm, no foul. I don't mind the learning lessons. And okay, you know what? Maybe that's something we tried. In the moment, it seemed better than actually what played out in reality. We're not going to do it again. But if he sits there and says, I have no regrets, if he thinks to himself, I'll do it again, that's when you got a problem. There was no justifying that decision. That was stupid. That was reckless, and it almost cost you the game. I've never seen that. A fake field goal up by 3 with a chance to make it a touchdown, beat you with 2 minutes or less to go. On the road, by the way. Never seen it. And I hope to never see it again. That was outrageous. Another quick hit here. Texas. Squeak by Arkansas 20-10. They got to ramp it up, man. They do have to ramp it up here. They've had a few clunkers of late. Quinn Ewers, I know, is now getting, the healthiest he's been really since that oblique injury he suffered early in the season. But you got A&M here in 2 weeks on the road. If you are continuing to play offense like we saw on Saturday, you're screwed. Texas's defense was great, but you are not beating A&M with that offensive performance we saw on Saturday. The urgency needs to tick up. You played well last week against Florida, but you got to really ratchet up here because that was a sloppy game for Texas on the road against a bad Arkansas team. And they got a big test ahead of them here if they want to be able to keep that door open for the SEC championship game and thus keep your path open here for a first round bye. Let's go to the Big 12 because this is maybe a result nobody's going to talk about, but it's important going forward here. Arizona State flat out whooped Kansas State. Now, the final score is 24-14, but they were up 24-0 for most of that game. You go on the road, beat the number 16 team in the country, and don't look now, Arizona State's 8-2. They're going to crack the rankings here in the latest playoff committee's rankings. At least they better. I shouldn't assume because the committee makes some boneheaded decisions, but Arizona State should get the attention of the committee. They should be a top 25 team when it's all said and done. They're in the race for the Big 12 title game. Like right now, as we're recording this, and if you're watching Sunday morning, I apologize, but we're doing this live here. BYU's losing at home. They're losing to Kansas. And so BYU still, since they're undefeated here at 6-0 in conference, 9-0 overall, they still have a path here where if they lose this game, they're still in the Big 12 title game. But you look right now with Arizona State, how they're playing, with Colorado, how they're playing, like Iowa State, you're going to have a really now interesting race to see who joins BYU in the Big 12 title game. And Arizona State's making a real case right now. They're playing some good football. They're one of the best teams right now in college football nobody's talking about. Cam Scatterbo, the really dynamic running back, returned after missing last week with an injury, had over 100 yards. Total offense was tremendous. This is Kenny Dillingham deserves a major hat tip. This program was dead under Herm Edwards. Dead. With the recruiting violations, with guys like Jaden Daniels leaving the program, this program was DOA when Dillingham took over. And he, in a short time now, has turned it around. He's brought belief into this program. He's done a great job. A great job here. Can't give enough credit to Kenny Dillingham and the job he did. What a great win over Kansas State again. You beat the number 16 team in the country by 10, in which you dominated for most of the game on the road. Hat tip to you, Kenny. Great win. Let's wrap up with this. And I want to go full circle here. Let's go back. The last point I want to make here has to do with Big Ten schools seating-wise. I thought the biggest winner from Saturday. Oh, sorry. I thought I had a little lower third there for it. I do not. My apologies. They were trying to make it look fancy. The biggest winner I thought from Saturday, though, were Big Ten schools. Ohio State, Penn State, and depending on how next week goes, Indiana. Here's why. Watching the Georgia-Tennessee game earlier, you heard Laura Rutledge report on the Tennessee sideline that the receivers during the game were cold because the heaters weren't working, and it was 55 degrees out. Oh, it's so cold. Oh, man, coach, I can't catch. I'm rusty. I'm cold. If you're cold in 55-degree weather and that impacts your play in the field, then you better be licking your chops right now if you're an Ohio State fan, if maybe you're an Oregon fan, if you're a Penn State fan, Indiana fan, because most likely 2 of those 4 schools I named, maybe 3, could be hosting first-round playoff games. And depending on the matchup here, you could be getting Tennessee going to your building. You could get Alabama coming to your house. You could get Georgia coming to your house. Ole Miss coming to your house. Those Southern teams are not used to playing in bitter cold. I went to Penn State. I know what it's like in December. It's cold, it's windy, it's miserable. If you're complaining about being cold and needing heaters in 55-degree weather, how are you going to fare in Columbus, Ohio in the middle of December? How are you going to play well in State College, Pennsylvania at night in a playoff game if you're struggling to play in 55-degree weather? These SEC schools have another thing coming to you. Real man football is played outside in the cold. And guess what's going to happen in the playoff here, assuming Penn State wins out, which they should. Ohio State or Indiana went out, which they should, after, depending on who wins on Saturday here. The winner of that game should win out and head to Indianapolis here with a great chance to at least bare minimum win the conference. If not, if they lose, they'll be in a great spot to host a playoff game. And same with Oregon. If they make it to the Big Ten title game and lose, they'll be hosting a first-round playoff game. You must be licking your chops, excited to hear, and maybe hoping to get one of these SEC schools to your building. It's going to be cold, and that weather's going to be in your favor. It could be a big advantage as to who wins. So that's why seeding is so important here in this first round, and why you're looking at these SEC schools, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee, now with all 2 losses. If you're looking at Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State with either 0 or 1 loss come the end of the year, we're looking at, again, 2, maybe 3 Big Ten schools hosting playoff games. By the way, Notre Dame, you in the mix as well. You're playing good football. South Bend's cold as hell in December. You could be hosting a playoff game. So all those schools right now that are on the precipice of hosting a playoff game, you, I'm sure, heard Laura's report and were thinking to yourself, oh, baby, get me one of those schools in my building, and I feel great about my opportunity to take them down in my element. So that's going to be a big advantage. That's why I cannot wait for these playoff games. They're going to be so much fun. Atmospheres are going to be great. And it's going to be really interesting seeing what most likely will look like a lot of these Southern schools going north, how they respond, how they react, how they play. It should be a big advantage for a lot of these Big Ten schools and Notre Dame to host and have these Southern schools come up north. All right. So that's really all I got here. Appreciate you listening. Appreciate you watching. Please, if you want to hear your thoughts, because this is not just me talking to you, I want to have this discussion with you. So, Noah, again, it's late. Tough to interact here live on the show. But as we're going here, actually, we do have, let's see. We do have a few comments. Abe been drinking is right in here. He wants me to move over so we can watch the BYU game. I think I'll get arrested for that if I am illegally streaming. So I'm going to not do that. But Abe Drinking, I believe, is a Penn State guy because he mentions a East Halls to Sackett walk at 7 a.m. Again, sounds like you're a Penn State guy. I'm a Penn State guy. Just trust me. It's windy and it's cold. Those SEC schools coming up north is going to be awful. Awful. So like Abe Drinking, if you want to comment your thoughts here, biggest takeaways from week number 12, right here on YouTube. Go in the comments. I'll respond to them. We can have a fun conversation here. I want to hear reactions to my Heisman Trophy rankings. Talking about, is there a team right now with a worse head coaching position than what LSU has with Brian Kelly? Let me know. We'll go back and forth. If you're listening, we're going to try to upload this on my podcast page for those audio listeners. Hick at Night, Night spelled N-I-T. You'll get it wherever you do get your podcast. Tweet me. Easiest way, Ryan_Hickey and the number 3. Or if you want to go to YouTube, channel is Ryan Hickey. Appreciate you watching. Appreciate you listening here. And we'll talk to you soon. Later.